Hey, what's up? It's Chris with the Gary Party. Today I'm going to talk about personal technology and particularly personal internet media technology. So we're in early 2024. The first really smartphone that I owned was the HTC Evo. That was an Android phone, released in 2010, so that's about 14 years ago. And it was a mind blowing thing for me. That was the first phone that I owned that had like unlimited access to the internet, map technology. I remember driving with my friend and just saying, "Hey, with this phone, like you're literally never lost because you could just map your way anywhere you wanted." That's sort of taken for granted here, a decade plus later. Um, but one thing I don't think people think about enough is that before that smartphone era, um, a lot of the technology that we had, a lot of the media consumption that we did was in shared spaces. So like TV, you could watch TV by yourself, but a lot of times you're watching with other people. Watching movies, that was something you do with quite a bit of people. And you did have like personal technology like music sort of players, but the smartphone era sort of ushered in this just era of like your technology being 1 inch away from your face and completely personalized to you. And somewhere I can sort of provide a little insight about like what how that changed the culture a little bit. As I've mentioned on this channel before, I'm ex Google, so I was involved in uh, some of the cultural shifts around personal internet technology. And one of the biggest things that goes into like designing the software, not only like individual applications that are on your phone, but the OS level software, is the idea of removing like any friction for the user. And that goes for like the businesses as well. Like if you think about like Amazon, for example, it's a software. The software is just like a system to order like stuff to you. But over the process of time, like Amazon's businesses have developed ways to remove like the frictions and like returning, purchasing the app or purchasing a product within the app. Um, just like the delivery times to you, like you can get same day delivery on some of these products. Pretty awesome. But the removal of friction goes hand in hand with kind of one other aspect that I'll go into here, which is that if you're in the previous days, before 2010, before the iPhone even, like you were using media with another person, and your primary relationship was with the other people that were with you in the room, or like if it's a movie theater, your relationship is somewhat like with the person that you're with, so you can sort of talk about the movie afterwards. But with an iPhone or with any smartphone, it becomes different. Like you build a relationship with the actual media itself, um, and that's it's a little tricky because the relationships you have with other people, they they challenge you somewhat. Not only do they challenge you, they sort of mediate you a little bit. So like if you're watching TV like with your girlfriend, or if you're watching TV with your like some friends, it's gonna change like what you're watching. It's gonna change like the habits you sort of have around watching. Like say you've watched like an episode of an hour long TV show, you're gonna ask the other person like, "Hey, do you want to watch another one?" And then they may or may not say yes. They may or may not have something to do, but you don't have that sort of mediating factor like with when you're just by yourself streaming something on your phone or on your TV at home. You can just do whatever you want. You can whatever content you want to consume, you can consume it as long as till the cows come home, basically. But the other thing is that you're there's the concept of like relationships with other people being challenging in a way, and that challenge allows growth to happen. You especially like romantic relationships, like you bounce off of each other. and you go through periods of feeling like unsatisfied, maybe, or the other person does, and you go through periods of like the space between you, like reducing and enlarging as you grow together. And that whole experience causes you to grow, but it's not quite the same with internet technology because as I mentioned, if there's friction that comes in the way of you using a certain like media platform or product, you're probably just going to change to another product or another website. You're just going to kind of get into the groove that allows you to just be like kind of in that sort of flow state of just like consuming media. So, if there's like in the political sphere, if you watch a video, it's like too boring or something, it's not quite like lighten up your endorphins the way that you need to. You're going to change it. If you watch something that you really like disagree with, like you'll probably change it, and you'll end up getting into this groove of like entertaining stuff that kind of like reconfirms your worldview. That's sort of like the sort of steady state, to use a mathematical concept, of how you like consume that content. And I get into porn a little bit, like in my conversations, because I tended to have a problem with that. But I think porn's like a pretty good metaphor. Like it's you have this sort of like when you have a relationship with this person with technology, it takes like a sort of natural urge that you might have, like a sexual urge, or going back to political stuff, a desire to sort of engage, as a citizen of the world with the world around you, and make changes. And what it ends up kind of doing is just being, you get into a state where just sort of being like stimulated. So you find the most stimulating thing, and it just sort of like is you with your device just basically pressing a button that stimulates these kind of feelings, and that becomes like how you actually sate those God-given sort of natural urges. But it becomes kind of ungrounded from the world in a way. So it also like leaves you separated from other people. Uh, I'll use those same sort of spheres again: politics, and like sex. So politics, it just leaves you in this space where you can't really like relate or talk to people who don't agree with you. And with porn, it can get in the way of like actual intimacy, because this experience of like actually like being sexual with somebody else isn't it turns out is not an experience of this person just lighting up your pleasure centers in exactly the way that you want it to be. It's become something real. So I think the takeaway from that, and I'm especially feeling this because I mentioned earlier I'm in a mummer string band. We put so much work like during the towards the end of the year, and like doing our New Year's preparations, and then once the New Year's Day parade happens, that's just kind of over, and you're sort of like, after all this sort of communal time spending working on like a shared goal, and having all this downtime, like talking to the dudes and telling jokes and stuff, you're just kind of left like to kind of sit there in your house. And for me, that's just been a lot of like being on the internet a lot, and it just doesn't it's somehow just not as fulfilling. Like, when I get back from like spending, like when I would get back from like a mummer practice or something, sitting there 3 hours, like carrying these like big props around, lugging them around, just shooting the shit with the guys. Sometimes I get back and I'm just like, oh man, it's nice to sort of zonk out and like just sit on the internet and scroll, look at some reels on Facebook. Um, but ultimately, it's not the same thing. It's not as fulfilling. It's kind of, it's a bit of an illusion. It's if living life out there in the world and like doing a bunch of random stuff and having like different experiences, if that's a thing, like the sort of like metaphor of that in the world of just like surfing around the internet, it's limited. It's the same. It's stimulating. Like instead of learning about the world, really, you get sort of like pleasure centers sort of stimulated in your brain that feel like you're learning about the world, but it's not. Yeah, it's just not quite the same thing. So going forward, I'm gonna find ways to sort of just sit with myself, I think, and because this phase, like, I don't really have a lot to do. Like a lot of my stuff is like around child rearing. Got a 5-month-old kid. Only so much you can do with a kid who's like 5 months old. Turns out, is my first kid. But so there's a lot of just like being bored. There's a lot of just like space, and I'm just gonna open up into that space and not like jump into using like my phone a lot, and filling that space with just basic stimulation. Anyway, that's it for me. Keep it gray. I haven't been doing a good job of keeping it gray, but these videos are always a reminder to do the triple click on the power button and go back to grayscale on my phone. So I will do that now after editing this video and putting the grayscale filter on. Peace, and yeah, take care of yourself.